You probably think you know what energy is. Everyone does. Energy is what things have when they move, or when they're hot, or when they can do work. You've heard it described as fuel, power, motion, vitality. Something that flows, something that gets used up. That entire picture is wrong. Not slightly wrong. Fundamentally wrong. And the reason it survives is because it feels useful. It lets you talk about engines, food, batteries, and effort without ever asking what energy actually is. Physics tolerates that at everyday scales. It does not endorse it. The moment you try to pin energy down as a thing, it slips away. Feynman was blunt about this. He didn't dress it up. He didn't soften it. He said, very plainly, that energy is not something you can point to. It is not made of anything. It does not exist in the way matter exists. And yet, it is one of the most precisely conserved quantities in all of physics. That alone should bother you. How can something that isn't a thing be so rigidly conserved? How can something that has no substance be tracked with extreme accuracy across every physical process we've ever tested? This is where the mistake starts. You were taught to imagine energy as a kind of invisible stuff. It gets stored, it gets transferred, it gets released. That language is convenient, but it is also deeply misleading. Energy does not flow like a fluid. It does not sit inside objects. It does not get used up. Energy is a number. That sentence should feel deeply unsatisfying. Good. That's the point. Energy is a number you calculate from the state of a system. Change the system. The number changes. Combine systems. The numbers add. Isolate a system, and the number stays the same. That's it. There is no extra ingredient hiding behind the calculation. There is no energy substance being shuffled around behind the scenes. If you remove the math, energy disappears completely. This is why Feynman said something that sounds almost offensive if you're used to popular science. He said, "We have no knowledge of what energy is. We only know that there is a quantity that stays the same." People hear that and assume ignorance. It's the opposite. It's precision. Physics refuses to pretend energy is a thing just because humans like thinking in terms of things. Now watch what happens when you follow this honestly. If energy is not a substance, then it cannot be consumed. When you burn fuel, nothing called energy is destroyed. When you do work, energy doesn't leave your body and vanish. When a battery runs out, energy hasn't gone anywhere. The number has changed form. Kinetic energy becomes thermal energy. Chemical energy becomes electromagnetic radiation. Mass becomes energy, and energy becomes mass, which should already tell you that neither of those words refers to a substance. They are bookkeeping categories. This is why the conservation of energy is so powerful and so strange. It doesn't tell you what happens. It tells you what cannot happen. You cannot make the total energy of an isolated system change. That rule has never been violated, not once. But notice what that rule does not say. It does not say energy exists as a thing. It says a certain numerical relationship holds no matter what you do. This should force you to rethink what you mean by real. Is something real because you can touch it? Is it real because you can see it? Or is it real because removing it would break every prediction? Energy is real in the last sense only. Now connect this to something even more unsettling. The reason energy is conserved is not because the universe is careful. It is because the laws of physics do not change over time. That's it. Energy conservation is a consequence of time symmetry. If the laws today are the same as the laws tomorrow, then there exists a conserved quantity. That quantity is what we call energy. This means energy is not fundamental. Time symmetry is. Energy exists because time behaves a certain way, not the other way around. Let that sink in. You thought energy was the deep stuff that drives reality. Physics says it is a shadow cast by a deeper regularity. If time behaved differently, energy would not be conserved, and no amount of philosophical attachment would save it. This is why energy keeps changing its costume. Kinetic, potential, thermal, chemical, nuclear. These are not different substances. They are different accounting categories for the same invariant. You don't observe energy. You infer it. You never see energy move. You see motion, radiation, heat, deformation. Energy is the number that stays balanced when you add it all up correctly. Once you accept that, the popular idea that everything is energy collapses. Everything is not energy. Energy is a property of how things change. Calling everything energy is like calling everything velocity. It's the wrong category. Energy is not what the universe is made of. It is how the universe keeps score. And once you see that, every mystical claim about energy immediately falls apart. There is no universal life force flowing through you. There is no hidden reservoir you can tap into with the right mindset. There is no cosmic battery powering existence. There is only a structure of laws that refuse to change, and a number that remains constant because of it. That is already enough to break most people's intuition. And it gets worse. If energy is just a number, then the idea that energy all it does. Things collapses immediately. Energy does not cause motion. It does not push. It does not flow. It does not act. Energy only constrains what is allowed to happen. This is the part that feels upside down, because everyday language trains you to treat energy as an agent. You say energy is transferred, released, stored. Those phrases are shortcuts, not descriptions. When a ball rolls down a hill, it is not because potential energy turned into kinetic energy and made it move. The ball moves because the forces and constraints allow motion in that direction. The energy accounting simply tracks that motion. The motion happens first. The energy bookkeeping follows. This distinction matters because confusing bookkeeping with mechanism is one of the deepest errors in popular explanations of physics. Energy is not the engine. It is the odometer. Now look at work, effort, and fatigue. Because this is where intuition fights back hardest. When you lift a weight, you feel tired. It feels like you are spending something. Energy, you think. But what actually happens is far more mundane. Chemical reactions in your muscles rearrange molecules. Heat is produced. Entropy increases. The energy number remains balanced. Nothing was used up. Nothing was consumed. The feeling of effort is not the depletion of energy. It is the consequence of inefficiency. If your body were perfectly efficient, lifting a weight and lowering it would leave you unchanged. No fatigue, no loss. But you are not a reversible machine. You produce waste heat. That's why you get tired. Energy is conserved. Order is not. This is why so many misunderstandings about energy are really misunderstandings about entropy. People feel energy disappearing because useful energy is becoming less useful. The number still balances. Your ability to do work does not. That difference is everything. Energy never runs out. The ability to organize it does. Now connect this back to the deeper picture of reality. If energy exists because time symmetry exists, then energy is not fundamental. It is derivative. It depends on something more basic remaining unchanged. The same is true for momentum and space symmetry, angular momentum and rotational symmetry. Every conserved quantity you know exists because the laws don't care about certain transformations. These quantities are not ingredients of the universe. They are signatures of its indifference. The universe does not care where you are. That gives you momentum conservation. It does not care how you are oriented. That gives you angular momentum conservation. It does not care when you are. That gives you energy conservation. Energy is the universe not caring about time. That is a devastating way to think about it, because it strips energy of every mystical role it was ever given. There is no energy of the universe driving existence forward. There is no cosmic fuel. There is no hidden reservoir being drained. There is just a structure that behaves the same way tomorrow as it did yesterday. Energy is the bookkeeping label that makes that behavior obvious. This is why attempts to turn energy into a substance always fail. You can't bottle it. You can't isolate it. You can't find it sitting somewhere. You can only calculate it from what things are doing. Now take the most extreme case. Empty space. Does empty space have energy? The answer is yes. And that should disturb you because there is nothing there in the everyday sense. No particles. No motion. And yet, the energy accounting still produces a number. Vacuum energy is not energy sitting in space like water in a tank. It is the energy associated with the lowest possible state of the fields that exist everywhere. Once again, energy is not telling you what exists. It is telling you how the rules apply. This is why energy can be negative in some contexts and positive in others. Why zero energy is arbitrary. Why only differences matter. Energy is not an absolute quantity. It is relational. You can shift all energies by a constant and nothing observable changes. Try doing that with a real substance. You can't. That alone should tell you energy is not a thing. This is also why mass and energy, if energy doesn't cause motion, doesn't fuel existence, and doesn't act as a substance, then a huge amount of language collapses all at once. Energy drives change. Energy makes things happen. Energy powers the universe. None of that is true, in the way you were taught to believe it. Change happens because the laws allow change. Motion happens because nothing forbids it. Structure forms because certain configurations are stable and others aren't. Energy simply tags along as a number that keeps its balance no matter how dramatic the transformation looks. This is why physics never uses energy to predict what will happen next. It uses equations of motion, forces, fields, and constraints. Energy conservation is a check, not a driver. If your calculation violates it, something went wrong. If it doesn't, you're still not done. Energy tells you whether a process is possible. It does not tell you which process will occur. That distinction is usually buried, because it ruins a neat story. But it is the difference between physics and metaphor. Now consider how this reframes the idea of using energy. When you turn on a light, it feels like energy flows from the power plant to the bulb and gets used up as light and heat. What actually happens is far less cinematic. Electric fields propagate, charges move, interactions occur, photons are emitted, heat spreads. Through all of this, the energy number stays balanced. Nothing called energy ever left a warehouse and arrived at your room. The universe did not ship you a substance. It enforced a constraint. Once you accept that, the idea of energy scarcity becomes clearer. The universe never runs out of energy. What runs out is the ability to keep energy organized in useful ways. This is where entropy enters. And this is where most confusion really lives. People blame energy for decay, exhaustion, disorder. Energy didn't do that. Entropy did. Energy stayed conserved the entire time. A dead battery has energy. A cold cup of coffee has energy. A burned-out star still has energy. What they lack is the ability to concentrate that energy into forms that can produce noticeable change. Energy is never lost. Usability is. This is why treating energy as a substance is not just wrong, but actively misleading. It directs attention to the wrong quantity. The universe doesn't care how much energy you have. It cares how constrained it is. Now take this one step further, because this is where energy's role becomes almost embarrassing. The 0 point of energy is arbitrary. You can redefine where zero energy is, and nothing observable changes. All physical predictions depend on differences, not absolute values. That alone should end the discussion about energy as a thing. Imagine trying to do that with mass or charge. You can't. You can't just shift them arbitrarily without consequences. Energy lets you do it because it is not an intrinsic property of anything. It is a bookkeeping choice that reflects symmetry. This is why energy is conserved even when space-time curves, even when particles are created and destroyed, even when matter turns into radiation. The bookkeeping adapts because the symmetry remains. And here's the part that quietly undermines almost every popular explanation you've ever heard. The universe does not run on energy. If it did, there would need to be a source, a reservoir, a depletion. None of that exists. The universe is not a machine with fuel. It is a structure with invariance. Asking where the universe gets its energy from is like asking where it gets its consistency from. It doesn't get it. It has it. This is why Feynman was so careful. He knew how seductive it was to talk about energy as if it were a real thing moving around. He also knew that the moment you do that, you start answering the wrong questions. Energy is not the explanation of motion. It is the constraint on motion. Energy is not the cause of existence. It is the signature of time symmetry. Energy is not the substance of reality. It is the number that refuses to change when reality transforms. Once you really internalize this, the title, "Everything You Know About Energy Is Wrong," stops sounding provocative and starts sounding literal. What you thought energy was never existed. What existed was a pattern of invariance you mistook for a thing. And that mistake matters, because it shapes how you think about effort, progress, limits, and even life itself. You don't run out of energy in life. You run out of low entropy states. You don't lack power. You lack organization. The universe doesn't decay because energy disappears. It evolves because energy spreads into forms that are harder to use. Energy is innocent in all of this. It never promised to explain anything. Humans forced that role onto it. And once you remove that role, something strange happens. The universe stops feeling like it's being powered by something and starts feeling like it's simply allowed to unfold within constraints. No fuel, no engine, no hidden drive. Just laws that don't change. And a number that keeps the books honest because of it. That is the real explanation Feynman was pointing at. And it's uncomfortable precisely because it removes the last illusion that there is something behind reality making it go. There isn't. At the end of all this, there is usually a reflex to ask for a replacement. If energy isn't the thing that powers reality, then what is? What takes its place? What really makes the universe go? That question is the final mistake. The universe does not go. It does not run. It does not consume. It doesn't require momentum to keep existing. Those ideas come from machines. The universe is not one. Nothing is pushing reality forward through time. There is no current flowing underneath existence. There is no battery discharging as the cosmos unfolds. The laws simply hold. And because they hold the same way at every moment, a conserved quantity exists. That quantity is what we call energy. Energy is not the cause. Energy is the evidence that the universe treats today the same way it treated yesterday. Once you see this, the need to explain energy disappears. There is nothing there to explain. You don't explain why a ruler has equal markings. You use the ruler. Energy is the ruler of time. This is why Feynman refused to romanticize it. He understood that the moment you turn energy into a substance, you start asking nonsense questions. Where is it stored? Where does it go? How do we make more of it? You might as well ask where distance goes when you walk across a room. Energy does not go anywhere. Processes change. Configurations rearrange. The accounting remains. That's all. This is also why the universe does not care about your intuitions of effort and exhaustion. Those are biological signals, not cosmic ones. They track inefficiency, damage, and entropy. They do not track energy disappearing. Your body is full of energy when you are exhausted. It is just trapped in forms that are no longer helpful. The universe is full of energy when stars burn out. It is just spread too thin to organize itself into stars again. Energy never leaves the room. Order does. This is the quiet, brutal truth underneath the slogan. Everything you know about energy is wrong, not because you were taught false equations, but because you were taught the wrong category. You were taught to treat a constraint like a substance. Once that mistake is gone, energy becomes boring in the best possible way. It stops being mystical. It stops being explanatory. It stops being dramatic. It becomes reliable, and reliability is the only thing physics ever asks for. There is no deeper secret hiding behind energy. No metaphysical layer where energy suddenly turns into real stuff. If you keep digging, you don't find fuel. You find symmetry. And symmetry does not need an explanation in terms of things. The universe does not exist because it has energy. Energy exists because the universe is consistent over time. That reversal is the entire point. Once you internalize it, the universe stops feeling like a machine that could someday stall. There is no risk of it running out of anything fundamental. There is only the gradual redistribution of structure into less organized forms. Energy will still be there at the end. What won't be there is the ability to do much with it. And that is not energy's fault. So if you take anything from this, let it be this. Energy is not what makes reality real. It is what lets you check that reality is behaving the same way from one moment to the next. It is a constraint, a bookkeeping rule, a shadow of symmetry. Nothing more, nothing less. And the moment you stop asking energy to explain the universe becomes easier to understand, not harder. Not because it is simple in the way stories are simple, but because it is honest in the way structure is. That was Feynman's explanation, not an answer you can point to. An illusion you can finally drop.